I want to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jared Weston. I'm with GradLeaders Athletics. GradLeaders, just real quick, has been partnering with university career centers and employers for the past 25 or so years, preparing and connecting students to their dream jobs. And this past spring, we launched a new software solution tailored specifically for collegiate athletics. This innovative platform is designed to streamline student-athlete development initiatives, enhance engagement, empower life after sport outcomes. As we all know, consistently engaging student-athletes can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. And our talented group of panelists are going to share some strategies and program-specific insights into how they intentionally engage their student-athletes and the impact it can have on the health and well-being of those student-athletes and really the overall success of the program. Before we get going, I just want to encourage everyone to submit any questions you have for the panelists via the chat window, and we'll address those at the end of the discussion. So with that, let's meet our panel. Kristia, you want to kick us off?
Sure can. Good afternoon, everyone. I am extremely excited to be here with you all today. My name is Kristia Worthy, and I serve as the Director of Talent Development at the University of Louisville. My former background is in student-athlete development and academic services, and now I get to do even more work around helping support our coaches and our staff in the areas of development, as well as helping and assisting developing our minority student-athletes. And a lot of times when I think about, who I am and what information I want to share, I always love to share my why. And my why is to empower people to reach their full potential. So everything that I'm involved with, any activity or interaction that I have with other people, my main goal is always empowerment. So thank you all so much for having me. And I will kick it over to the next panelist to introduce themselves.
Hi there, this is Corinne Milien. I am the Executive Director and co-founder of the Winning Edge Leadership Academy. And my why is because I love it. I love to create opportunities for the next generation of women and minorities who want to work in sports business. That is what the Winning Edge is about. And I have been doing it way longer than I would like to admit. And I'm going to keep on doing it until somebody puts me in a grave.
You keep doing it. Keep doing it.
Keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it.
Thank you. Arin?
And I'll turn it over to Arin. Boop.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Arin Dunn. I serve as the Director of Student Athlete Development in our Forever Texas program at the University of Texas. I'm a former student athlete. I was pretty much raised on a college campus. And so my why is to educate, equip, and empower our student athletes. So truly blessed and privileged to have an opportunity to do that with our student athletes and with our coaches. So it's great to be here with everybody and looking forward to this afternoon session.
Yeah, thank you all again for agreeing to share some insight. And I've been looking forward to this ever since we've started kicking this around there a few weeks ago. So again, no big surprise what our topic is here today: intentionally engaging student athletes. So, engaging student athletes. No, we're intentionally engaging student athletes. And so let's talk about that elephant in the room right now. What does intentionally engaging student athletes look like for you? Kristia, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, I definitely can. Being intentional is important almost every single last thing that you do. So whatever you're doing, you just don't want to do it to check the box. You want to make sure that there's purpose behind it. So when it comes to intentionally engaging student athletes, I'll just start off by saying that it starts with relationship building. So the relationships that you build with the student athlete, the relationships that you build with their support staff, and even the relationships that you build within the community, right? So it definitely takes a team a village to help develop our next future leaders. And it will look quite differently depending on your resources, depending on the particular student athlete that you're working with, but recognizing that you have to build that foundation relationship to intentionally engage them and get them involved and figure out what their needs are.
Absolutely. And I think that we're going to hear that theme throughout today's discussion is the relationship factor, right? Start there. Corinne, what's that look like with you in the Leadership Academy and your outreach?
Yeah, I think intentionally engaging student athletes means getting those kids that don't often come into the office, right? The ones that aren't in there all the time saying, hey, I got this interview I'm going to do. But those that are like, oh, I'm going pro, getting them in your office, because plan A should be what happens after 10, 15 years after you play pro. That's not a plan B, that's a plan A, because unless you are Phil Mickelson, who can play golf forever, it will be your season, your career will end. So getting those kids who don't think they need you yet and getting them to come into your office and engaging with you is what that means, is what intentionally engaging student athletes means to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether it's Phil or love him or hate him, Tom Brady, the ageless one, man.
Tom Brady, I swear he's living a double life. He is
right?
Someone drinking that miracle spring water that I see on the infomercials.
Yeah, it's something. Arin, so you've been doing this a while. You experienced it obviously as a student athlete, so you've got some great experience. But down in Austin, you walked into an amazing opportunity, but this whole COVID thing, might have had a little bit of an impact on your intentional plans out of the chute. So you want to talk a little bit about what that's looked like for you here this past year?
Absolutely, Jared. It's had an opportunity to come down to Texas and kind of build something up from scratch, something that our student athletes needed, kind of an area that really needed to be not just filled, but executed well. And for us, intentionally engaging our student athletes is about understanding what they want and what they need, listening to them to kind of figure out what are some things that they feel like they need, as well as we know the things that they probably need as well. But really making sure that they felt like their voices were heard when we were developing our program, making sure that they had input in the program and some of the things that they were doing and wanting to see. I think the other part too, for us and really kind of being intentional about it was not being afraid to get away from maybe some of the things that we're usually used to doing and trying to make sure that we're adapting to technology, adapting to what employers are looking for in terms of a career-ready student. And so really just kind of being open to innovation and making sure that we're keeping our ears to the ground and listening to what our student athletes want and need. And then again, building those relationships with our student athletes as well. So we're continuing to try to get better each day and making sure that we're being innovative in what we're doing so that they're as prepared as possible.
Yeah, and I wanted to just follow back up on two things that Corinne, you mentioned, Arin, you mentioned too as well. The first thing, Corinne brought up a great point, and I typed it into the chat because I'm like, okay, we need to make sure we talk about this, but finding ways to engage those folks that would not naturally come into your office, that would not naturally show up to a leadership event.
Well, Kristia, you went on mute. There you go.
Sorry. We have to, as student athlete development professionals, really find ways to be creative to engage people who would not naturally show up to events. And that is the group that we're missing. We're missing the folks that won't show up and ask us for help for a resume or won't show up to get, informational internships. So how are we supporting those individuals? How are we meeting them where they are so that we make sure that they're being developed? And again, we have to put that work in. We have to strategize and figure out how can we connect with every single last type of student athlete that we have within our athletic department. Because if we're about supporting all the student athletes, that means we're supporting everyone, whether they're engaged all the time or they're engaged, once in a blue moon. And another thing I wanted to talk about, what Arin mentioned, he talked about meeting, learning more about the student athletes, figuring out, who they are. And we as professionals, we have to stay educated on learning about this current generation that is out there. So Gen Z, what do we know about Gen Z? How are we providing the support that they need to help them with navigating the world that they're in right now? Because this generation, they're experiencing something that we did not have to experience. We didn't go to school in the pandemic. We don't have access to social media and technology at our fingertips. So it's a very unique group. So how are we learning about this generation and using that information to help engage and meet those student athletes where they are?
Yeah, and I think that's key is, we've heard it a couple of times, is meeting them where they are. And Kristia, thank you for elaborating a little bit more on that. I also want to dig in a little bit more in Terrence from TCU ask in the chat, what does that look like, in the real world, without showing up looking like, hey, I'm just here to promote this upcoming webinar. I'm just going to leave it up there and let whoever wants to jump in and take that.
Hi, I think, and I love that Arin unmuted himself at the same time, because, we geeked about this. We talked about this in our prep call. And for those who don't know me, there's some people on here that already know me. This is who I am all the time. So if you're not ready, get ready. This is my vibe all the time. But show up all the time. Go to practice. Go to workouts when they're doing their 4-on-1s, when they're doing their individual workouts, be there. I think a lot of times when they see you in the building, somebody's in trouble. Somebody didn't do what they were supposed to do. Be a fixture at the workouts, be a fixture at practice, and now you're in their space. So if you come the last 30 minutes of practice, they may feel a little bit more comfortable asking you a question about interviewing or whatever, because that's their element now. They want to, when you're in the office, they got to come and pass all these administrators and they got to have a button up. They feel all this pressure to be a certain way. But now when you're at practice, the sweat is dripping down and touching your paper and all that. So they're used to that. So being where they are makes them a little bit more comfortable with asking the questions that a lot of times they think is dumb. Right? They don't want to sit in the room with the tennis player that's had 3 years of experience getting internships and ask a question about interview, when it's like, I know ain't nobody on my team have experience with internships, so I'm gonna ask this question. So that is definitely a way to just be different and just be where they are.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's just, in terms of the student athletes and building that trust and rapport with them. And we talked a little bit earlier about reaching that group that might not show up to certain things or that we have a hard time reaching, showing up to their space and being around the place that they feel most comfortable. You might be able to steal 5 or 10 minutes here or there. And maybe that 5 or 10 minutes after practice turns into them showing up to workshops or showing up to your office to talk more about a resume or working on, personal development stuff like vocal leadership. It also gives you some information to not use, but information to utilize when you're working with student athletes. So if you're in practice and you see they might be a little bit shy or a little bit tentative, and kind of figure out, maybe this is a student athlete that we need to work on helping them understand that they can still be a leader, even if they're not necessarily vocal. I think the other part of that too is, we talk about building that relationship with student athletes, but with coaches too, because coaches are very, can be very protective about their student athletes' time, who they allow around their student athletes. And so unfortunately, sometimes when you work in either academics or student athlete development or really anything, coaches might think, well, what does this person want from me or want from my student athletes? And so I think if you show up and just are there and watch them do what they love to do, watch student athletes do what they love to do, coaches will start to see that you are genuinely there for their student athletes and to help them. And so I think it goes a long way with not just the student athletes, but the coaching staff. It helps with buy-in. And then you get a better feel for that program and what might be needed for that particular student athlete or that particular team. So I'm a huge component of going to practice or team meetings or, whatever coaches might allow you to be involved with. I think that's a great way to build those relationships.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kristia.
Okay, I would echo everything that someone said, but I love, be in their space. And when you say their space, you're talking about their practice space, their social media presence space, all of that. So like, I love DMing my student athletes. I love retweeting when they share different things like, oh, excellent, good job. You got student athlete of the week. How awesome. Just trying to find ways those small touch points that you can make and you can have to start fostering those relationships. And I love that Kristia mentioned putting it on her calendar, right? So if you really want to be intentional, you're blocking off time on your schedule. You're setting goals for yourself. Okay, I'm going to reach out personally to 10 student athletes this week. And one thing I love to do, you know, we're meeting student athletes where they are. I FaceTime student athletes. That is not an issue for me. I will be at home in my PJ. They will FaceTime me, but just really being authentic in the ways of how you connect in those relationships. And I love, you know, building that relationship with the coach, the director of ops, the athletic trainers. All these people have these touch points with the student athlete. And once they know you, they know what your programming is about, they're more likely to assist you with getting them engaged. And one thing that I do love is trying to find ways indirectly how to connect with someone. So let's say there's a student athlete that you just had a hard time getting to, talk to their athletic trainer or coach. Is like, hey, I'm really trying to connect with Mary. Can you share me different things that I could talk about or engage with to, you know, make that connection? Just really be innovative in how you do that.
I would like to make sure Kristia mentions the fact that she goes to games and takes selfies and sends it to the players to let them know, I see you, I was there cheering you on. And it's like, you may think like, yes, there's 10,000 other fans in there, but you were there. And now you are saying, hey, come to this resume workshop. They put those things together. Don't overlook the small things. And it's something that I preach a lot. Like, you don't have to build a school in Africa to make a difference, right? You could do the little things. Just show them that you care. Show that you braved the cold and went to their outdoor track meet. Like I used to, when I was at Tennessee, I would get my hammock and my dog and string it up and watch the rowing team go across the Tennessee River. I don't know nothing about rowing. I still don't know anything about rowing, but you better believe me and Drake were at the edge of the river talking about go balls, right? So be there for them because it matters.
Well, and I'll say if this pandemic has shown us nothing else, is the fact that we can work wherever we are, you know. So I think Kristia, you mentioned it on our prep call of just go set up shop in the arena or, you know, somewhere and, you know, do your work there. You know, again, you're going to have office hours and stuff like that, but just go be seen. Again, it's all about being genuine and establishing that relationship, right?
Jared, before you go, I don't know if this is bias of me, but Rick Barnes at Tennessee, his office is in the practice arena, right? So he has an office with all the pictures of things and trophies. So if there are any Texas people here or Tennessee people, but if you want to find Rick Barnes, he has a laptop and his cell phone in the practice arena sitting at a table. So when anybody wants to, if they're coming in the gym, he's in there. Don't be surprised if you pulled up a seat right next to him and you're there now with him, right? So now, not everybody's a Rick Barnes, it's okay, but you can maybe train them to get a little closer to that, right? And now he's gonna be an extension of who you are. He's gonna advocate for you. You may come 3 days in a row and you're not there for 3 weeks, but he remembers, oh, Corinne was here with me all day for 3 days in a row. Now, he's out there fighting for you as well.
Yeah, and that goes to kind of my next point I want to talk about is not only intentionally engaging the student athletes, but intentionally engaging, like, you know, one of you mentioned the director of ops, their assistant coaches, their, you know, performance coach, those types of folks, because they can be an extension, you know, of you. And then, you know, even the development office. You know, does anyone have examples to share with regards to how you've leveraged those relationships to help facilitate your efforts?
I'm not on campus, so I don't speak to these things.
I think you used that comment when we were talking before. Arin, were you going to say something?
I was going to say just one of the things in being new and having a new program at the same time is, you know, those relationships in terms of building buy-in for coaches is really important. So helping coaches see how the programming and the things that you're trying to do for their student athletes are going to help them holistically, because we know the better holistic person they are, and the more confident they are, the better they will be able to perform both in the classroom as well as in their sport. And so it's hard for a coach to argue that, right? And so if you can show that, and the coaches need to know that it's genuine, right? They need to know that you are genuinely there for their student athletes. The programming is intentional, like we mentioned before, for their student athletes. I think that's really important in terms of building buy-in for coaches and allowing them to see that. The other thing that I think we talked about in our prep call was if you got some coaches that want to sit in on your programming, that's amazing. I was fortunate to have a coaching staff sit in some of our programming at my previous institution, and I loved it. I mean, they were in there taking notes so that they could have follow-up conversations with their guys after the workshops and continue to have those moments of growth. So coaches are going to want to see that what you're doing is effective and that it's impactful for their student athletes. If they're going to be willing to give some time to you to be around their student athletes, you got to be able to show the impact that you're going to have on their student athletes. And one thing I would bring up is, in addition to, we talk a lot about the internal side in terms of our student athletes and coaches and support staff, but another thing or another group that's really important is letter winners or your former student athletes, and having them serve as advocates, because it's kind of like the cool uncle, right? So mom and dad might tell us something 1,000 times, but when Uncle John comes in to tell us, we actually listen. And so that's what our letter winners and alumni can serve as, because they have been out in the real world, and some of them are closer removed to our student athletes than we are. And so oftentimes they will listen to them. So whether it's a panel or them coming in to facilitate a workshop for student athletes, I think that's another group that's really important to get buy-in from and get engaged in terms of trying to engage our current student athletes.
Yeah, and I want to add, I hope everyone who works in student athlete development, you're doing some type of like end of the year report to showcase the amazing work that you did throughout the year, but share that information with everyone. Share that with your entire athletic department so they know what's going on. Share it with your coaches, share it with your development team. And I'm all about being strategic with the relationships that you build with development. So maybe you have a once a year meeting with, hey, here are some current programming that we have going on. Here are some areas that I would love to receive some funding, and give them that information of what they could talk about. I love the idea of tapping into former, even current student athletes being able to talk about the impact of, that particular experience, being able to show results, because that would truly help you with getting that buy-in and building those relationships with other people within the athletic department, even within the community.
Yeah, I think that's key. And there's been a lot of chatter here about, how do you do this with, minimal staff? I think that's, again, a challenge that probably everyone on this call experiences. And I know some departments, break it up by sport and different things. What does that look like at Louisville and at Texas?
We've really tapped into having amazing interns and graduate assistants to help us with our reach. So really finding other individuals that are within our athletic department. Maybe we partner a lot with our SPAD program, sport administration program, and college student personnel program, to really gain individuals that will help enhance our reach. And I think I also want to mention too, that we keep in mind the importance of having a diverse staff, right? Because unfortunately, you may not be able to connect with every single last person. So having someone else that will be able to relate to them, and other folks that bring different ideas and different experiences to the table will help. But it's really helpful having interns and graduate assistants, because we are spread very thin and it is hard, but really tapping into that community approach of providing support to student athletes is really important.
I will also add, since Kristia invited myself and a former advisory committee member, Lamar Pottinger from the NCAA, to come speak to Louisville. I was kind of radical when I stated this, and now that I have, now that Vince Tyra we're best friends on LinkedIn, we cool now, I can say this. But like there's 5 or 6 of you in a department, right? But there's like 500, 600 student athletes. There's a lot of people that don't have a job if it weren't for student athletes, right? Get these other people involved. Just because you are director of marketing or coordinator of tickets doesn't mean you can't review a resume. Doesn't mean you can't do an interview prep. So get those folks engaged in the career development for your student athletes, whether it's like create a rotation where this week, maybe this department is reviewing resumes. Maybe this week, this department is doing a job shadow. Do something so that everybody is bought in, because again, like I said, there is no job for them if it weren't for these student athletes. And also remember, if the student athlete experience is one they remember and is positive, they become donors at the end of the day. Ain't that what it's about? You want them to give money. If they don't have a good experience while they're there, they're not giving money. And we already know, I can go and find the research that minority student athletes are the least likely to give back to their school. And there's a reason for that. Are they being engaged? Are they being intentionally engaged? So what are we doing to ensure that their experience is one that they are thankful for, even regardless if they become a professional athlete or not? 5, 10, 15 years from now, they may have the resources to donate, and you want them to remember, oh yeah, I remember the director of marketing showed me how to roll a t-shirt. I'm gonna give money. That's a real experience for them. So I'm all about challenging people and making them uncomfortable, and again, reminding them you don't have a job if it's not for them. I can say these things because I'm not on campus. I live in Cumming, Georgia. I don't report to anybody but God. But you don't have a job if it's not for these student athletes. So what are you doing to enhance their experience? And I will also say, that create campus and create team ambassadors. Get those kids, and it's not the kid that always comes. Get the kid that got swag. Get that kid that the team likes. And if they do something on TikTok, everybody else does the same thing on TikTok. Ashley, when we did our prep call, the one kid that comes to all the events is probably the same kid that they don't want to hear from anymore. But if you get that one kid that's like, sometimes I go to these things, but if Kristia texts me, I'm gonna go, get that kid bought in, get that kid to go and advocate for you with the team.
Yeah, I agree. Utilizing your resources within athletics if you can. One thing we hear a lot is athletic staff that want to be more connected or engaged with student athletes. So we're very fortunate in our roles that we get to interact with them on a day-to-day basis. But some of the other, athletics administrators or staff don't get a chance to do that. And so one, they're always interested in what our student athletes are doing, but also how can they get involved in helping with their development. So seek out those staff members that do want to get engaged with your student athletes, whether it's for maybe a specific program or events that you're doing. That's always a helpful thing. The other thing I would say too is campus relationships are huge, so that you don't necessarily have to facilitate every workshop or develop every workshop. If it's a career related thing, get involved with your campus career center, or if you've got really tap into the different maybe academic units on campus that you can really utilize as a great resource, because oftentimes, as you all know, our student athletes can feel a little siloed in terms of they go to class and then they're in our academic facilities. And I know one of the things that we're really trying to work on is getting our student athletes more engaged and connected with the resources that campus has to offer as well. So if they come see me about a resume, I love it. If they go see Campus Career Center on a resume, I love it. As long as they are getting that one-on-one attention that they need and development that they need, even better. And so I think that's something that can really be helpful for if you have a smaller staff. The other thing I would mention is we've got a smaller staff right now as well, but we've kind of assigned what we call a point person for each of our teams. So similar to kind of how academics has each team, somebody on our staff has a group of teams that they work with to serve as a point person for that particular team. So that gives them an opportunity to really build some strong relationships with not just their student athletes, but their coaches. They help facilitate communication as well as opportunities. So that can be something that is helpful in terms of reaching more of your student athletes and it not falling on the shoulders of just one person.
Yeah, I think that's key. And we talked a little bit about engaging with your development office. And, you know, Corinne, you talked about engaged student athletes result in engaged former student athletes, you know, whether that's a financial contribution or just serving on a panel or, you know, helping with some of these resume reviews, those types of things. And, you know, we've seen the impact that, you know, out at Cal with, you know, the private gift that they received, and now the $12 million leadership academies been, you know, instituted. And at Akron, you know, they received a multi-million-dollar gift to launch a leadership academy in Penn. And so these things don't happen out of the blue. It's, you know, some of it was they were engaged student athletes in the past. Others are because the development team knew what you all are doing, you know, taking them, you know, hey, here's, you know, our report from what we did last year and how many alumni or corporate partners were engaged in these events and those types of things. So again, just reiterating some of the things that you've already hit on. But what about from a virtual standpoint? It's great to be able to go sit in the gym or out at a track meet or those types of things. But right now we've got a lot of restrictions. So how are you intentionally engaging in the virtual space?
The virtual space definitely has brought a lot of challenges. And I know even from a staff standpoint, our student athletes are zoomed out. They're tired of being on these videos. They are exhausted from not being able to like see people in person all the time. So I've really embraced the quality over quantity approach, making sure that you have really good content or good programs that bring a lot of quality as opposed to having so many events a year, right? But there are so many different cool and unique tools that are out there that can help you with virtual engagement, from the breakout rooms in Zoom to Mentimeter if you haven't heard of it before. But there's a new tool that I just discovered. I'm giving y'all a free game right now. It is called Jamboard. So it's through Google. It is free 99. I just used it yesterday for the first time and I got so much like really good feedback. But basically it's different ways of how people could add sticky notes to like this virtual board. It's really cool. So Jamboard, but really tapping into those creative ways. Mentimeter is a great one too. But you have to find ways to keep their attention. If you're trying to have a program, we've had to cut programming down. Like usually if we met in person, it might be like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Now we're strictly keeping it to 1 hour sessions just to maintain some of the attention and engagement that we have with folks. So creative, yes, thank you. It's awesome. I love it. I love it. It's my new favorite thing now. But really small breakout rooms, integrating different type of learning techniques and engagement techniques. So having small group discussions, personal reflection, quotes, all those different components that help with engagement. You have to still create that in this virtual environment.
I agree with Kristia. Trying to create a similar welcoming and fun environment in the virtual space as you would if you were there in person, I think is important. So any way you can do that, you know, small breaks throughout the workshop, trying to make them a little bit shorter virtually as opposed to if you were in person. Still trying to keep some of those facilitator elements in there for our student athletes in a virtual space. Can be a little bit difficult, but it's definitely something that I think people have really tried to incorporate.
And you're not alone. You don't have to do it, right? We are an organization. I try to tell people we are not out here to replace what you're doing on campus. We are here to supplement what you're doing on campus, right? So we have, we meet them where they are on the gram. As much as I hate it, we are on the gram every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern and 6:30 p.m. Eastern, providing conversations with current student athletes who are working in sports and entertainment. So we've had all the way from JJ Redick to Tiki Barber and Maria Taylor to somebody who just graduated 3-4 years ago, providing their perspective. So put a little bit of effort into finding those additional resources that are out there that can provide some of the things that you want your student athletes to have. I think often that if I'm not creating it, then they can't have it. And it's like, stop that, right? Like I can't speak for all the other things, because I know you get emails all the time from XYZ saying, hey, come pay us money to do this for your student athletes. We don't even charge you. We doing this for free. Every day, all day, since day one, it's free. Unless they come to our retreat, then you gotta pay. Make sure they get here safe and sound. But outside of that, we're on Instagram. All of our resources is free. I see Missy from the SEC is here. Like, we are trying to, again, be a supplement and enhance what you all are already doing on campus. So find out those other organizations that can fill in the gaps that you can't do because of the limited resources you have. And that provides, that shakes things up a little bit. They hear from different people. They have experience with different platforms. One thing that we mentioned on our prep call is representation matters. And this is something Jared and I, in our first conversation, yes, I was like, I don't know how Jared is going to take this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Like, as well-intended as it might be, that white girl from Doolittle coming to tell you about whatever she's doing sometimes doesn't resonate with a 300-pound, 6'4" football player from Alabama, right? Like, that's real. You can't deny that. Stop thinking like, oh, colorblind this and all this stuff. It's 2021. We see it. It's real. We have to have representation. We have to be able to think outside the box with the speakers that you are engaging from a campus perspective. Like, it's great to have, somebody who has this great story, but sometimes it's not just about the story. It's about, oh, that kid is from Mississippi too. Oh, I know that backwoods. I know that, I'm from Atlanta. I was born in Miami. I play golf though. So I relate to a lot of different things. And I see you, Deja, you laughing hard on my golf. I stay on the course. Okay? Cardi B blasting the whole way on the way. But you gotta put the effort in to find people like me. I'm not saying you have to find me. I'm here though, you can find me, but there are people out there, and I think too often it's the same voices that they're hearing from all the time when it comes to on campus, because they have a name or because whatever they emailed you. Put a little bit more effort into finding those that can relate to the student athletes that, again, aren't coming. Because the kids that are coming, they're gonna come regardless. Whatever programming you put, they're gonna come. What are you doing to engage the kids that aren't coming right now? And if they're from the hardest part of South Florida, you're gonna have to put a little effort to find somebody that can relate to them and speak their language, because sometimes they just need to be cussed out. And it may not be in a big old Zoom like this, but I'll hit them up in the one-on-one and be like, hey dog, nah, that ain't gonna work.
Yeah, thank you for that. And the other thing, and I was gonna jump to it here, and I see it in the chat, are metrics. Reporting, tracking, what does that look like? I know, Kristia, you talked about kind of that end of year report. You want to start by just sharing what that looks like at Louisville and hear from the rest of you guys?
Yeah, definitely. Some metrics that we utilize at Louisville, we use Help a Helper to track our community service and engagement. And we're able to see the information that shows how many student athletes from a particular team is engaged with community service. And people love competition. So we share like, hey, we have 100% of men's soccer is engaged, 100% of track and field, but there's only like 25% of like volleyball or, men's golf. That helps with that engagement. Even from a coaching standpoint, a coach can brag and say, hey, 100%, excuse me, of my team participates in community service on an annual basis. But some of the metrics that you can utilize is how many different programs you hosted during the year, number of participants, how many people landed internships, or how many mock interviews or resume feedbacks that you conducted. Just those different metrics. And I love every end of the semester, people will post on social media what they look like. And shout out to Carmen from South Carolina. She does a great job with showcasing on an annual or semester basis what their department in student athlete development had produced. So it's definitely a lot of ways to display that. But again, make it look pretty, make it look good and organized, and share it with everyone within your department.
And I guess real quick, Kristia, how are you measuring those? I mean, is it just Excel, or do you have any kind of technology that you're currently using?
And when you say measure, are you talking about measuring like the effectiveness or like keeping track of the programs that you do on an annual basis? I think that might be two different approaches. But I would say one way to track effectiveness, I mean, I hope everyone is getting feedback after all of their events. It may seem like annoying and a pain in the butt, and you may only get 3 or 4 people to do it. But make sure that you're getting feedback on the program that you're getting. You may think that your idea and the way how you're connecting with folks is the best way, but ask the student athletes, hey, how could this program have been improved? What would you like to see in the future that would help spark your interest and your teammates' interest so that we can make sure that we're meeting those needs? So definitely make sure that you are doing those feedback. And it was better doing it in person, because I would say, hey, do this before you go. But now virtually they can easily just log out and be gone. So it goes back to having those relationships with saying, we really want this feedback. We really want to make sure that it's effective. But just to like track programming, having that calendar that has all the events, and then an Excel document will help. So if you have all of your programming, the date, how many people attended, and even if you're able to pull that data from the feedback from each event would be helpful. I love getting testimonies from student athletes. So even if each event you get about 2 to 3 different student athletes to say, hey, can you give me like something that you really enjoyed, or just something I can share on other marketing tools, that would help you as well with being able to pull that information together to share as well.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head in terms of student athlete testimonies. We talked earlier about having student athlete champions for your programming or initiatives, but those testimonies can be huge, not just for other student athletes, but if you're trying to show the impact to coaches or to maybe your foundation board to help raise money, those testimonies can be huge. I know one of the things that has been helpful for us is we have what we call a 4-year curriculum for our student athlete development programming, which is broken down by cohorts essentially. So freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And so we utilize that to help us track what our student athletes are doing each year that they're here, based on some of the things that they are required to do and some of the things that are optional for them to do. So that helps us see engagement. We can look at it and see, here's what our freshmen have done this year. Here's what our sophomores have done. Here are the things that they have enjoyed. Here are the things that they didn't enjoy. Here are things that they would like to see more of. So that has really been helpful for us in terms of not just a metric for tracking, but also showing coaches that we're being intentional about what we're trying to do with our student athletes. So I think that has been really good for us in terms of a metric to track effectiveness.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll just share a quick shameless plug here on GradLeaders Athletics. I've heard this, and so within our platform, a lot of you have seen it, but we've automated a lot of the reporting, track everything that happens within this system, and attendance, and there's built-in survey capabilities, those types of things. But this obviously is a key component to your programs, and can help in the recruiting process as well, and can help in when you're reaching out to former student athletes to show them what you're doing and how they can get involved from a participation. Forget the financial thing for right now, but just get them to get plugged back in and show that need, and then share it with the coaches, share it with the development team. Those metrics and all of those annual reports should be a recruiting and marketing piece for all of your programs as well. So
I would also add one thing too. If you're looking for an area of like professional development or getting experience, ask your development officers if you can attend a meeting with them. See if there's a way for you to go so that you can be a part of that conversation. Because since you're the one doing the hands-on approach, you're able to really get that info out and be able to articulate the impact. And it'll be a great experience with you. We'll be able to interact with donors and be able to say, hey, I assisted with getting a $10,000 donation for our Leadership Academy, or I helped with XYZ to get this initiative started. But try to see if you can get a seat at the table as well, if you can be involved in that conversation.
It's a great strategy.
I want to add one other thing to that development piece. I think in the last couple of months, we've seen a heightened awareness of people wanting to give back to certain causes. And I think don't be afraid to think outside the box. One thing that we've been able to do that is a result of our Game Changers calling us out and their letter of demands, as many campuses experienced over the last summer, was that we don't engage with partners that just cut a check, right? So we have partners like we have Adidas and you know all these people that they're real good about cutting a check. They real good about providing gear, but our Game Changers demanded that, and Jalen Mason from Arkansas, shout out to her, I know there's some Arkansas people on here, said you need to engage with partners that provide opportunities. And so in June of last year, we created our Gigs for Game Changers initiative that provides short-term paid remote opportunities for our Game Changers. And that is a great tool to go back to your development department as they're thinking of how to engage boosters. Like if I'm at Tennessee, Larry Pratt can donate money. If his name is on the court, he can provide money to create opportunities, right? And so if there is a booster that has a business in the community, or they have the resources to provide opportunities, say, hey, our student athletes can't go and do the traditional internship because of their competitive schedule or their academic schedule. But this is an alternative to that, where they still getting that experience while on campus, and they're available year round. So think outside the box with how you spend money. It doesn't just have to be for panels and speakers and all that stuff, because that's cute, but likes don't pay bills, they don't provide opportunity. Get your donors to provide opportunities, whether they're within their organization or through funding. And compliance can handle the other stuff. Don't worry about that. That's not your job. That's compliance. They get a check for that. You worry about providing those opportunities.
Well, real good. I wanted to make sure we have time for this last. I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to just share some real life outcomes, positive experiences that you have seen that have resulted from this intentional engagement. Arin, you wanna lead us off here? Some specific example that you've been a part of?
So many examples of just opportunities to engage our student athletes and the impact of it. I would say I can think of a couple different situations of what we would call student athletes that don't typically show up to our events or are hard to reach. And I just think showing them the opportunity that they have to impact not just their future, but their family's future as well. Is huge. And the moment that you see that light bulb turn on, and they see the potential that they have, there's no feeling like it. And the importance of the engagement personally with that individual is huge, because as we talked about before, most of the time we have to make it personal with our student athletes for them to really buy in and really understand why this is important to them. Our student athletes, as we know, have so many things coming at them at once, and it's hard for them to filter that sometimes. And so if you can really be intentional and personal with them and show them how this is going to benefit them as an individual, and then benefit them in their future, I think that's really important. And I think the other part of that would be getting them to take ownership of their development is really important. We can provide them all the resources, we can connect them to all the people in the world, but until they take ownership and pride in their own development, and what we call the most important investment that somebody can make, and that's an investment in yourself. And so when they start to see that you truly care about them, they start to look at things from a different light. And so that's where that personal engagement seems to be really impactful.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I love that, Arin. And just to add some personal examples, pre-COVID, I always had an open door policy, right? So student athletes can come in, like I could be having the most busiest day, but my doors stay open because I want them to know that they can come in. And oftentimes, some of the conversations will just be random. They may just sit there and do their homework, or they may come in just to eat. But I remember one day I had a student athlete in my office, and I believe she might have been like a freshman at the time, or maybe a sophomore. But she was just in my office one day, and I happened to get online on something within our university, our student involvement on campus, and I saw an email about a conference that was happening at Louisville in our department. And I was just like, hey, you should apply. Like the deadline was today. So I was like, oh gosh, how did I just see this opportunity? And the deadline was the day of. I hadn't heard anything about it. I just happened to go into this platform, see this event. I'm like, hey, you should apply. You should do it. She was like, really? She applied, she got accepted, and she had the best experience. And the program was not for student athletes, it's for students. So she was able to build connections outside of our athletic department, really learn more about who she was and how she could be an advocate for social justice issues. And I really believe that particular event was a pivot into who she was as a leader, because she took off after that experience. She's been so engaged. She's been really helpful with molding other future leaders within her team and within our athletic department. Another particular situation I could think of is a student athlete who did not want to do anything, did not want to engage in our programming. And I said, hey, it was me building that relationship over time, getting to know him, asking him about his life outside of sport, because that's really important, getting to know what they were really passionate about. And one day we had an event. So I'm an advisor for our minority student athlete called SCORE. And I was like, hey, you should just attend, just come check it out. Just go to this one meeting. He did me a favor, came to that one meeting, and he started to show up every time after that. So it just really took me asking him, getting to know him, building that relationship, telling him just check it out one time. And if it's lame, you don't have to come back. And he went and he loved it. And I just love those moments where we're able to find those connections and get people involved. And it may seem like a small moment to you, but ultimately it would be a big moment in their development and who they are.
I've heard that. Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. I have to shout out Arkansas again. As a lady ball, it pains me to give the Razorback love, but I'll be fine. So I got an email from Jayla Mason. She's a redshirt senior on the basketball team now. And 2 years ago, she sent me a random email asking to be a part of Justin and I both. She wanted to be a part of our Game Changer retreat. And I get a lot of emails from people thinking I'm going to help them get a job, even if I don't know them. I get so many I'm like, I don't even know you, but okay. But she sent me an email. I sat in my inbox for a while, and eventually I basically responded and said, hey, instead of just coming to our retreat to participate, how about you come and be our photography assistant? I'm going to go hire somebody that works for ESPN to be our photographer, but you can come and be our number 2 photographer. And so she came, we took care of all the lodging, and she was our number 2 photographer. And then she did such a great job. We paid for her to come out to Beverly Hills and be our photographer for our 2-day retreat that we had courtesy of Endeavor. And it's not always about what they want, right? She wanted to come to the retreat. That's what she thought she wanted. But I said, let's do something different. And let's create an opportunity for her to gain experience. And one of the people that she got a chance to work with is the social media person for the Georgia women's basketball team. And every time Arkansas plays Georgia, they're like 2 peas in a pod now. And if you saw them on the street, you would not even think they know each other, they have anything in common. But Ryan Leonard from Georgia, he loves her and he would do anything for her. And then the second piece is, anytime we engage on campus, we try to provide value. It's not like, here's this panel or whatever. So we do professional headshots. And I want to say that because the assumption is that they good because they get a picture in uniform, but that picture in uniform gets old real quick. Mm-hmm. if you can, which I really would be surprised if no one can't. So I say that with all the T, all the I side eye, provide a professional headshot with them, whether it's business at the top, party at the bottom. Give them a professional headshot, whatever you have to do. Get your photography people to provide a professional headshot. It makes a world of a difference for them. Their LinkedIn, it's something that they now feel on level playing field with their peers who aren't student athletes, right? If like the only picture I ever have of is me in this jersey, then I feel inadequate. I don't feel like I measure up to everybody else. Just like, you know, sometimes the football team, they do it in the suit and tie, but there are a lot of teams that don't do that. There are a lot of basketball teams that don't do that. Find the time, make the time, do whatever you have to do to provide them a professional headshot. And Misty was, we did that for SEC career tour when they came to Atlanta. And I love when they hit me up and I see the picture that we provided for them on their LinkedIn, and they geeked about it. They're like, I feel like I can do anything now. And literally it's a picture, like it's literally a picture. So it's again, you don't have to build a school athlete. You don't have to go and buy them a 3-piece suit with Gucci lining. Just give them a professional headshot.
I think that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel like this conversation could go on for, you know, another 3 hours, but again, being respectful of everyone's time, I so much appreciate the insight. And what I'll do is I'll try to compile a list of some of the things that Kristia, Corinne, and Arin have talked about, and I'll share that probably later. It'll probably be early next week with everyone who registered, as well as a recording. But thank you all again so much. This has been great. If anyone's interested in learning more about the GradLeaders Athletics platform, how it can help with the metrics and streamlining your initiatives and outcomes, or even seeing a personalized demo, you can visit gradleaders.com/athletics, and we can continue the conversation there. But really appreciate each of you. Thank you all for your time and joining us today. I think we were able to get to most of the questions. So thanks again, and we'll catch up again soon.
Before everybody goes, wegamechange.org. You know, I got to put my plug, Jerry. You already
I got you. I'm gonna send all that out. Don't you worry.
All right. Listen, we on the gram. I put our YouTube to our thing in the chat. Every Wednesday, we try to do that. Share those videos with your peoples. I'm around. I love talking to people. This is my job. So I'm around.
Thank you so much. See ya.